My brother thought I was a failure until he realized who had paid his salary. For years, he mocked my internet job while boasting about his fancy corporate title, never suspecting that my playing around online had built a multi-million-dollar company that was about to acquire his firm. Family dinners were an exercise in restraint as I quietly succeeded while they praised his real career. When your own parents hang your brother's diploma proudly but hide your achievements in a box, the validation you crave isn't just about proving them wrong. It's about watching their faces when they finally see you clearly. This Thanksgiving, everything changed with 6 words. I'm the CEO who bought your company. Stay until the end to witness the most satisfying family revelation ever served alongside turkey, and the unexpected wisdom that comes when success speaks for itself. You'll never amount to anything sitting behind that screen all day. My brother's words cut through the celebration of my biggest client signing yet. His Harvard class ring glinting as he raised his glass. Not to toast my success, but to remind everyone of his own. Welcome to my life as Alex Mitchell, the failure of Boston's most achievement-obsessed family. I stared at my laptop screen, the glow illuminating my face at 2 a.m. while I finalized another 6-figure client contract. Outside my window, the Boston skyline twinkled with possibility, but inside my parents' minds, I was still just playing computer games. My older brother James had been stamped with the success label from the moment he donned his first suit and marched into the gleaming downtown office of Wellington Financial. His MBA from Harvard hung prominently in our parents' living room, while my digital marketing certifications and entrepreneurship awards collected dust in a box under my bed. When are you going to get a real job, Alex? Mom would ask at Sunday dinners, the question laced with genuine concern that somehow cut deeper than outright criticism. Dad would nod in agreement, his eyes never fully meeting mine as he passed the potatoes to James. Your brother just got promoted again. Senior vice president now. The memory of my 13th birthday still burned fresh in my mind. James had received a new bike that same day, for his perfect report card, even though it wasn't his birthday for another 3 months. I'd smiled through gritted teeth then, just as I did now, 15 years later, whenever he launched into stories about his corner office. Digital marketing isn't sustainable, James declared at last month's family dinner, cutting into his steak with surgical precision. It's just a fad. All these internet companies will collapse eventually. He smirked across the table, his expression a perfect blend of pity and superiority. If you ever want me to put in a word at Wellington, little brother, just say the word. Better to jump ship before it sinks. I'd nodded politely while something hardened inside me. What James didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Mitchell Digital had just crossed the 8-figure revenue mark. My playing on the internet had built a company that now employed 37 people. I paid myself less than I could have, investing back into growth that was now compounding monthly. That night, as I drove back to my downtown apartment, a place my family assumed I could barely afford, I made a promise to myself. I wouldn't try to convince them anymore. My success would speak for itself, eventually. I just didn't know yet how perfectly that moment would arrive, or how sweet the silence would be when it did. No one knew that the same night my family dismissed my career over dinner, I was finalizing the biggest acquisition in Mitchell Digital's history. While they clinked glasses to James's latest promotion, my team and I were preparing to purchase a company worth twice what my brother's annual bonus would ever be. The irony wasn't lost on me as I walked into our downtown Boston office the next morning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the harbor, a view that had cost me years of sleepless nights and constant hustle. Sarah, my COO since day one, handed me a coffee and the final acquisition paperwork with an excited smile. "We're really doing this, Alex," she said. The only person who'd believed in me when I started this company from my studio apartment 5 years ago. The board approved everything unanimously. McLaren Digital Solutions will be officially ours by the end of the month. I signed the papers, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. Sarah had been there the night 3 years ago when I'd broken down after another family dinner. They'll never see it, will they? I had asked her, voice cracking. No matter what I build, I'll always be the kid playing on his computer to them. Then build it so big they can't possibly miss it. She'd replied simply. And that's exactly what I'd done. Mitchell Digital had grown from just me and Sarah to a powerhouse team of nearly 40 employees. We'd carved out a reputation as the go-to digital marketing strategists for the financial sector in New England. The McLaren acquisition would double our size overnight and expand our reach nationally. Yet that Sunday, as I brought a bottle of wine to my parents' traditional family dinner, nothing had changed. My mother kissed my cheek absently while asking if I was still doing that internet thing. My father barely looked up from the sports section. "How's business, James?" Dad asked as we settled around the table, completely skipping over me. James launched into a detailed account of Wellington Financial's latest restructuring. The merger has everyone on edge. He mentioned between bites of my mother's pot roast. Rumors are flying about who's staying and who's getting cut. "That sounds stressful," Mom said sympathetically. "But you'll be fine. You always land on your feet." When the conversation eventually turned to me almost as an afterthought, my father's question was predictable. "Found a steady job yet, Alex?" I swallowed the instant flash of anger. "Still running my company, Dad. We're actually expanding." James snorted slightly. "Expanding what? Your Twitter following?" The table erupted in polite laughter while something cold settled in my stomach. I didn't mention the McLaren deal. I didn't share that our revenue had increased 340% year over year. What was the point? In their eyes, success only looked one way. James's way. As I drove home that night, my phone buzzed with an email from our HR director about onboarding the McLaren staff. "Complete employee list attached for your review," the subject line read. I nearly deleted it without looking. HR could handle the details. But something made me pull over and open the attachment anyway. And that's when I saw a name that made my heart stop and my hands grip the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. James Mitchell, Senior VP of Client Relations. The shock of seeing my brother's name on that employee list paralyzed me for 3 full minutes in my parked car. James Mitchell, my own flesh and blood who had spent years belittling my career, was about to become my employee. The universe had a twisted sense of humor. Thanksgiving arrived 2 weeks later, bringing with it the crisp New England air and the suffocating weight of family tradition. My parents' suburban Boston home smelled of roasting turkey and decades of unmet expectations. I arrived deliberately late, having spent the morning in emergency meetings about the McLaren transition. The acquisition had been finalized yesterday. Our companies were officially merged, though most employees wouldn't be notified until Monday. James included. "Finally decided to join us," my father remarked as I hung my coat in the hallway. "No hello, no how are you, just mild disapproval, as consistent as the tides." James stood in the living room, brandy in hand, regaling our cousins with stories of corporate heroism. His voice carried that practiced confidence they taught in business school networking seminars. "The new management is making ridiculous demands," he was saying. "Some tech bro, who probably lucked into family money, thinks he can revolutionize a perfectly functional system." My mother touched my arm as I entered. "James is having such a hard time at work," she whispered, as if sharing news of a terminal illness. "Some internet company bought them out. He might lose his position." I nodded, my throat suddenly dry. "That's unfortunate." The dinner that followed was an exercise in restraint. With each passing minute, James grew more animated about his workplace grievances, unaware he was complaining directly to the source of his problems. "The CEO hasn't even had the decency to introduce himself," James declared, cutting into his turkey with unnecessary force. "Just sends emails about digital transformation and synergy optimization. Complete buzzword bingo from someone who's probably never worked a real job." My father shook his head sympathetically. "Companies these days are run by children with algorithms instead of experience." My hands trembled slightly as I reached for my water glass. The familiar anger rose in my chest, but this time, it was accompanied by something unfamiliar. Power. For once, I knew something they didn't. "What's this CEO's name?" I asked, keeping my voice casual while my heart hammered against my ribs. James rolled his eyes. "Mitchell Digital. Some nobody who calls himself a digital disruptor. Probably runs his business from his parents' basement." The table went quiet as my mother noticed something in my expression change. "Alex? Are you all right, dear? You look flushed." I set down my fork with deliberate calm, though everything inside me was electric with anticipation. 28 years of being the family disappointment crystallized into this perfect moment. "Mitchell Digital," I repeated slowly. "That's interesting." "Why?" James asked, irritation creeping into his voice at having his rant interrupted. My fingers hovered over my phone. One email could change everything. One truth could rewrite our family's entire dynamic. I took a deep breath and looked directly into my brother's eyes. "Because I'm that nobody." The bomb I'd just dropped left nothing but stunned silence in its wake. "I'm that nobody." My declaration hung suspended over the Thanksgiving table, My family frozen in various states of disbelief. James's face had transformed from smug superiority to blank confusion in the span of a heartbeat. Without waiting for anyone to recover, I pushed back from the table and walked out. The carefully controlled narrative I'd been planning suddenly felt suffocating. "I need a minute," I managed to say, already heading for the back door. The knife edge of Boston's November air cut through my dress shirt as I stepped onto my parents' deck. My hands trembled, not from the cold, but from the adrenaline crash following years of pent-up resentment finally finding release. The distant city skyline glittered with possibility, with one of those lights belonging to my corner office. The office my family assumed was a shared coworking space. 28 years of being the family disappointment had culminated in this perfect moment of vindication, yet instead of savoring it, I found myself questioning everything. I pulled out my phone, scrolling past dozens of unread emails about Monday's official merger announcement to find Sarah's contact. "It's happening," I texted. "James works for McLaren. He's been complaining about the tech bro CEO who bought his company," without realizing it's me. I just told them. Her response was immediate. "Holy shit. Did you plan this?" "Complete accident," I replied. "Universe has a twisted sense of humor." "What are you going to do now?" she asked. The million-dollar question. I stared at the screen, watching 3 dots appear and disappear as Sarah waited. What did I want from this moment? The revenge fantasy had played out differently in my head. James begging for his job, my parents finally seeing me as successful. But now that it was happening, those satisfactions felt hollow. "I don't know," I finally responded. "Part of me wants to savor watching him squirm, but maybe there's a better way to handle this." Sarah's reply cut through my indecision. "You didn't build Mitchell Digital by being petty. You built it by seeing potential where others saw problems. Be the CEO now, not the little brother." I took a deep breath, watching it cloud in the cold air. She was right. This wasn't about settling childhood scores. It was about leadership. About being the person I'd become, not the person they thought I was. The deck door creaked open behind me. My father stepped out, his expression unreadable in the dim light. For the first time in years, he seemed unsure of himself. "Your mother's worried," he said quietly, his standard proxy for expressing his own concern. I nodded, pocketing my phone. I imagine everyone is a bit shocked. He moved to stand beside me at the railing, both of us staring at the distant city lights. "Mitchell Digital. That's really you? The company that's been all over the business section lately?" "Yes," I replied simply. The silence between us stretched, filled with 28 years of miscommunication. Finally, he spoke again, his voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. "I never understood what you do, Alex," he admitted. "I still don't." It was the most honest thing he'd ever said to me. I turned to face the house, straightening my shoulders with newfound resolve. "Well," I said, "I think it's time I showed all of you exactly what I do." With newfound resolution burning in my chest, I walked back into the dining room, my father following quietly behind me. The tension in the air was thick enough to slice with the carving knife still stuck in the half-eaten turkey. My mother sat rigidly in her chair, while James stared at his plate, knuckles wide around his fork. "Is this some kind of joke, Alex?" James finally broke the silence, his voice attempting its usual dismissive tone but falling short. "Mitchell Digital is a multi-million-dollar company. You expect us to believe you're running it?" Instead of responding with words, I pulled out my phone and opened my email. With deliberate calm, I found the company-wide announcement that had been sent yesterday to the board of directors about the McLaren acquisition. I placed the phone in front of James, watching as his eyes widened at the Mitchell Digital letterhead and the signature at the bottom. "Alexander Mitchell, CEO and founder." That's not possible," he stammered, color draining from his face as he scrolled through the email. "This has to be fake." My mother leaned forward. "James, what does it say?" "It's the merger announcement," he whispered. "Dated yesterday. From the CEO of Mitchell Digital. To the board of directors." His eyes flicked up to meet mine, truly seeing me perhaps for the first time in our adult lives. "You're the tech bro who bought out Wellington Financial's digital marketing division?" "McLaren Digital Solutions." I corrected him. "Your division was sold to Wellington 3 years ago, which was then acquired by McLaren last year. And yes, as of yesterday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, McLaren is officially part of Mitchell Digital." The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. "But that means James works for me now." I finished for her, the words sending an electric current through the room. Starting Monday. James pushed back from the table so forcefully his chair nearly toppled. This is ridiculous. I'm a senior vice president. I manage client portfolios worth hundreds of millions. And you'll continue to do so, I said evenly. Unless you'd prefer to resign. Your choice. My father, who had been silently observing, finally spoke. All this time, when we thought you were just tinkering online, I was building a company that now employs 78 people. I finished. A company that generated enough revenue last quarter to purchase the firm that neither of you believed I could even get hired at. James's face cycled through shock, anger, and finally, something that looked remarkably like fear. Are you going to fire me? He asked quietly. The question hung in the air. 6 months ago, I might have savored this moment, might have let him twist in uncertainty as payback for years of condescension. But Sarah's words echoed in my mind. Be the CEO, not the little brother. No, James, I said finally. I'm not going to fire you. From what I've seen in your performance reviews, you're actually quite good at what you do. I paused, allowing a small smile. Despite what you might think about internet companies, Mitchell Digital only acquires assets we believe in. My brother stared at me as if seeing a stranger. In many ways, he was. The Alex he knew, the perpetual disappointment, the little brother playing at business, had never existed except in the family's imagination. So what happens now? He asked, his voice uncharacteristically uncertain. I glanced around the table at my shell-shocked family before answering. Now we finish Thanksgiving dinner. And on Monday, you'll meet your new boss. The following Monday morning arrived with a weight of anticipation I hadn't felt since launching Mitchell Digital 5 years earlier. The glass and steel of our downtown Boston headquarters reflected the morning sun as I stepped out of the elevator onto our executive floor. Sarah waited by reception, coffee in hand and a barely suppressed smile on her face. Ready for the McLaren orientation? She asked, handing me the steaming cup. Your brother arrived 15 minutes ago. He's in conference room with the other senior staff. I paused, taking a steadying breath. The rest of Thanksgiving dinner had been painfully awkward, with conversation stilted and my parents casting bewildered glances between James and me as if trying to reconcile their understanding of their sons with this new reality. James had left early, mumbling something about needing to prepare for Monday. Is he nervous? I asked Sarah as we walked toward the conference room. Like a freshman on his first day of high school, she confirmed. But he's trying hard not to show it. When I pushed open the door, the room fell silent. 20 executives from McLaren sat around the massive table, with James positioned exactly in the middle. His perfectly pressed suit and power tie couldn't hide the uncertainty in his eyes when they met mine. Good morning, everyone. I began, setting down my portfolio. Welcome to Mitchell Digital. I'm Alex Mitchell, founder and CEO. For the next hour, I outlined our company vision, the integration plan, and addressed concerns. I was careful not to single James out or give him special treatment, neither preferential nor punitive. He was just another valued team member now. When the meeting concluded, people filed out until only James remained, pretending to organize notes that didn't need organizing. Your office is impressive, he finally said, glancing around. I had no idea. You never asked, I replied simply. James nodded, accepting the gentle rebuke. I deserve that. All those years of advice about getting a real job. He trailed off, shaking his head. I was an ass, wasn't I? Sometimes, I agreed. But that's behind us now. What matters is what happens next. He looked up, genuine curiosity replacing the defensiveness I'd grown accustomed to seeing. How did you do it, Alex? Build all this while none of us were paying attention? By believing in myself when no one else did, I answered. And by understanding that success doesn't always look the way other people think it should. 1 month later, my parents hosted another family dinner. The difference was palpable the moment I arrived. My father greeted me with questions about recent tech innovations he'd read about in the Wall Street Journal. My mother had framed an article about Mitchell Digital from Boston Business Monthly and hung it beside James's Harvard diploma. Most surprising was James himself, who arrived with a bottle of champagne and a business idea he wanted my opinion on. I've been thinking about developing a financial literacy app for young professionals, he explained as we sat in the living room. Your UX team is incredible. I'd love your thoughts on the concept. As my mother called us to dinner, my father raised his glass. To both my sons, he said, voice thick with emotion. who've taught an old man that success comes in many forms. Later that night, as I drove home along the Charles River, I reflected on the lesson that had taken me years to learn. True success isn't measured by someone else's yardstick. It's built by staying true to your vision when everyone else questions it. It's proven not by seeking validation, but by creating something so undeniable that even your harshest critics must eventually recognize its value. Sometimes the people closest to you are the last to see your worth. But when they finally do, when understanding replaces judgment and respect replaces dismissal, that recognition is all the sweeter for having been earned rather than freely given. Success isn't always recognized by those who matter most to us. Sometimes it needs to announce itself. My journey from family disappointment to respected CEO taught me that validation from others, even family, is never as powerful as believing in your own path. While that Thanksgiving revelation changed our family dynamic forever, the real transformation wasn't James becoming my employee, it was finally being seen for who I truly am. Remember this when others dismiss your dreams. Sometimes the best response isn't arguing, it's quietly building something undeniable. Your success will speak louder than their doubts ever could. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and drop a comment about a time someone underestimated you. Subscribe for more real stories about turning doubt into triumph, rejection into success, and proving the skeptics wrong. This channel is for everyone who's ever been called a nobody, but knows they're destined for something extraordinary.